Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Liza Foreman, and I'm a journalist taking you around the world with me in my series, Nomad, The World is My Beat. In this week's episode, we're looking back at my decade covering Hollywood and my time as a reporter living and working in Los Angeles. I want to tell you something that still makes me laugh. I grew up in a small seaside town on the English coast. I was not, by any stretch of the imagination, a film industry kid. I didn't grow up obsessing over Hollywood. I barely watched television. But I did sit down one Saturday and watch Top Gun, Tom Cruise, fighter jets, Danger Zone, the whole thing. A few years later, I was interviewing him in Hollywood, in person. I didn't go to LA because I'd always dreamed of America. A lot of people who end up there did. They grew up with the mythology, the movies, the idea of California as the promised land. That wasn't me. I went because journalism took me there, almost accidentally, through a chain of events that started in Berlin. I was in my early 20s when my mentor, Kevin Cote, an American journalist, sent me along to a Foreign Press Association drinks evening and told me to ask around, see if anyone needed an assistant. Eric Kirschbaum was there. He was Variety's Berlin correspondent. He asked if I wanted to help. I didn't immediately say yes. I knew almost nothing about the film business, and I still didn't watch TV. But a year later, I took him up on it, and that decision quietly changed the entire direction of my life. I learned journalism on the job. I made calls to Los Angeles from Berlin, explaining stories I was only half sure I understood. One of my earliest editors, Elizabeth Guider, said something to me in those early days that I have never forgotten. "You're not an expert yet, but you're becoming one," she said to me. It was one of the most powerful sentences anyone ever said to me in my professional life. It gave me permission to be in the room while still learning. Over the following years, I worked my way from Berlin to the London office of Variety, and eventually Moving Pictures International, Variety's sister trade publication, offered me the chance to go to Los Angeles as their US editor. I took it without hesitation, and so I arrived in California. I got lucky with housing, almost immediately, which in Los Angeles is its own kind of miracle. A contact at the paper connected me to someone who had a 3-story beach house in Santa Monica. And before I quite knew what was happening, I was living on 2 floors of it, behind the Hotel California. Yes, the real one. The one the Eagles sang about. It exists. And I went to live next door. Next door was the Loews Hotel Santa Monica. And if you know the film industry, you'll know that the American film market, one of the world's major film markets, took place in that hotel every year. I covered it professionally. The entire global film industry would descend on it once a year. That's the dreaminess of Los Angeles that I genuinely, deeply loved. The blue skies, almost constant, almost guaranteed. The outdoor life that became your default rather than your treat. Swimming, hiking the trails up into the Santa Monica Mountains, driving up to a place called Idlewild in the mountains, a gorgeous, slightly hippified little escape with fresh air and yoga workshops and beautiful small cafes, and a feeling that the world had slowed down. I'd go whenever I could, just to breathe properly. There was Big Sur up the coast, the epic drive to San Francisco through some of the most beautiful coastline on earth. Down to San Diego and across into Tijuana, out to Las Vegas across the desert. When you had time and a car, California could feel genuinely limitless. And then there was the work. As a film trade journalist in Hollywood, your days are structured around access and information. I was responsible for covering certain studios. I'd be sent to galas and press events and sometimes thrown in front of someone I didn't even recognise and have to just perform confidence and get on with it. That's the job. You do a lot of lunches in Hollywood. You drive to a lot of lunches. The whole ecosystem runs on relationships. They talk to you because you can make their clients news. You talk to them because they're where the stories are. It's transactional, but it's also genuinely social, and in the right moments, it's fun. There's a period in Hollywood before everything went digital and everyone got too busy, when the long lunch was an art form. I should also tell you about Samuel Goldwyn Jr. Shortly after arriving in LA, working for Moving Pictures International, I called Sam, the son of the legendary Samuel Goldwyn, one of the founding figures of Hollywood. Our goal at the paper was to reconnect with the independent film world, and who better than a Goldwyn? Sam was warm and generous with me from the very first call. He completely took me under his wing. I'd go to parties at his house. He'd show me photographs, actual photographs of Charlie Chaplin in the house, and he'd sit and tell me the backstories behind them. When I later discovered my own family roots in Palestine, Sam spent hours on the phone with me, just listening, genuinely interested, encouraging me to make a film about it. He was in the truest sense family to me during those years. That warmth is also part of LA. People are open in a way that can surprise Europeans. It's chatty and friendly, and there's a lot of love you honey, and everyone's a Buddhist or doing Kundalini yoga or on some kind of wellness journey. I got deeply into it myself. I trained at the California School of Shiatsu Massage, studied Chinese medicine, assisted the director of the school. I did Thai massage, got lots of acupuncture. I went to Esalen up the coast, the legendary alternative health retreat. There's also just the weirdness of LA that I love. The characters, the yogis on the beach at dawn, the Muscle Beach bodybuilders, the vagabonds on the Venice boardwalk, the Kundalini crowd in their white turbans, the billionaires in Bel Air, and the homeless veterans sleeping under the freeway 6 blocks away. LA holds all of these people simultaneously and doesn't particularly try to reconcile them. It's one of the most extreme cities on earth in terms of wealth and poverty existing in absolute proximity. And that brings me to the other side. It is brutally, almost cartoonishly fickle. The moment you lose a job, and in that industry you will lose jobs, everyone does, the invitations stop, the lunches stop. People who knew you perfectly well, who sat next to you at screenings, who called you for quotes, suddenly develop a kind of selective amnesia. You're only as good as your current masthead, and that is a hard lesson, and it doesn't get easier to learn. I also had my share of despicable colleagues, people who stole opportunities, who manoeuvred me out of positions, who were just, and there's no other word for it, gross. I was hired and fired several times. And the legal system there taught me something I'll never forget. Money buys lawyers, and lawyers buy outcomes. I once lost an apartment because someone with expensive legal representation simply outspent me in court. The judge sided with money. That happens in LA. It happens a lot. I also moved at one point 14 blocks inland, which doesn't sound like much. But in LA, it was a different world. I found myself living between 2 rival gangs. My car was stolen. There were nights that were genuinely frightening. Gun violence is there. You don't feel it constantly. It's not as present as the headlines make it sound, but it is there. And the homelessness, unlike anything I've experienced in Europe. Vietnam veterans living on the streets. People who have completely lost their minds and have nowhere to go and no safety net to catch them. No universal health care, no social housing, nothing. In America, if you fall hard, and there is no floor. You have to have a car, you have to have car insurance, you have to have health insurance, you have to have a job, because without one your visa situation becomes precarious very quickly as a foreigner. The cost of just existing in LA is enormous and relentless, and there is no break from it. The Pacific Palisades, where I spent so much time as a freelance using the Starbucks as my office, burned to the ground recently. LA has changed, America has changed, deeply and in ways that feel irreversible right now. And so have I changed. I haven't driven a car since I left California, not once. I cross Europe by train, by boat, by bus. That sense of being able to move through different cultures, different languages, different histories, all within a few hours, fills something that Los Angeles, for all its gifts, genuinely couldn't. Everything requires commitment and a car and a freeway. In Europe, everything is just next door and different, genuinely, meaningfully different. I also, and this might surprise some of you, find the European way of being around other people more comfortable, despite what I said about the friendliness of LA. Would I go back to work in Los Angeles? Honestly, yes. It gave me some of the best professional years of my life. The access, the stories, the friendships, the sheer improbability of it all. A girl from a small English seaside town ending up inside Hollywood, interviewing the biggest names in the world, living behind the Hotel California, swimming in the Pacific. I wouldn't trade any of it. But would I choose to live there over Europe? Not now, not with what America is becoming politically, and not when I can board a train in Paris to be somewhere entirely different in 2 hours. Los Angeles is a dream, a real one, with darkness underneath it, like all the best dreams. Europe is my life. I'm Liza Foreman, and this is Nomad, The World Is My Beat.